Hello everyone, and welcome back to the PlayStation 2 Retrospective, the show where I take a look at PS2 games on anything but an actual PS2. Today we're gonna talk about Star Wars again because I'm a greasy fanboy, specifically Star Wars Battlefront, a first-person slash third-person shooter hybrid that's based off of the best sci-fi franchise ever made. Fucking fight me! For transparency's sake, I am looking at this game through the PC release, as well as my original Xbox copy through the 360's backwards compatibility, on top of also emulating the original PS2 release. As you can tell, I've covered all my bases for this video. Battlefront was originally conceived as, quote, the ultimate fan's dream, end quote, which, looking back, makes a lot of sense. Games before Battlefront's release, and even after it, had a major focus on big adventures for classic heroes alongside original creations. Even games like Republic Commando or Jedi Academy were about an elite group of clones, or a special Jedi who's trained by Kyle Katarn and Luke fucking Skywalker. None were about simple ground soldiers from both sides of the war just doing soldier shit, which is what made Battlefront stand out. Development began in 2002 by Pandemic Studios, who at this time had mostly just worked on real-time strategy games, as well as already working on a Star Wars title, that being 2002's The Clone Wars, another forgotten Star Wars game that I probably should have talked about before this one, but it's too late now. Battlefront was released only 2 years later, on September 21st, 2004, to coincide with the original trilogy DVD set, technically making this a tie-in game. By 2007, the game had collectively sold 4 million copies across all platforms, but the PS2 release sold 1.9 million copies alone, both overshadowing its original Xbox and PC releases, as well as becoming the 75th best-selling game on the console. If it sounds like I brushed over the history aspect this time around and just read off numbers most of the time, it's because there's not much there whatsoever. The dev team had a goal and executed said goal within 2 years. That's all we got to work with this time around. But hey, you don't see me fucking complaining, it makes my job easier. Gameplay wise, it's a standard shooter with the addition of switching between first and third person views, including in vehicles, which is an impressive addition for 04. You can choose between a standard heavy, sniper, or shotgun class, not to mention special classes like the Jet Trooper. Each comes with their own weapons and skills, but I mostly stick with standard because I'm obviously the ultimate gamer. Each match is a battle of attrition. Both factions have a finite amount of troops as well as spawn points, the latter of which can be taken over at any point by the opposite team. Whoever runs out of troops or spawn points first loses. And sometimes there's a third party like Gungans, Tusken Raiders, and even Gamorrean Guards, which offers a certain level of spice to the levels that they're in. There's also heroes who can join a match, such as Vader, Luke, Dooku, and Mace Windu. Actually, I think that's all of them. However, plot twist, you can't play as them whatsoever in this game, which is an interesting change of pace for a Star Wars game to say the least. These games were almost always about the power fantasy of playing as Obi-Wan or Yoda, but in this installment, Pandemic leaned more into the replaceable foot soldier idea, which makes this game unique alongside the rest of the Star Wars library. When it comes to the campaign, I can't really talk about it like any other because it isn't like any other game that I've talked about, not just in this retrospective, but in this channel, at least as far as I can remember. That's because this campaign is just a retelling of the 5.5 film's events by playing the planets in chronological order with relevant clips playing after each battle. But the reason that it's only 5.5 is because this game was released in 2004, a year before Revenge of the Sith came out, so the prequels campaign only goes up to the Battle of Kashyyyk, making it even shorter. Yeah, you can finish both the Clone Wars and Civil War campaigns in about 4 or so hours depending on the difficulty that you play. And I'm honestly not surprised. The series has always had a hyper focus on online multiplayer, which I won't really be talking about because we don't do that here. However, I respect that Pandemic still offers a significant amount of single-player content outside of playing the campaign solo. There's still multiple galactic conquest maps, where you play as a specific faction taking over the galaxy, as well as instant action, where you can play specific maps in whatever order you please. Not to mention that everything from the campaign to instant action can also be played in local co-op, which was the reason that I whipped out my Xbox copy in the first place, and it did not disappoint. Adding a second player to be your partner or your adversary can honestly make the game. It helps that Battlefront is already a solid experience as is. The game holds up extremely well in terms of audio and visuals. Pandemic did their best with the 6th generation hardware as well as a 2-year development period to make an incredibly accurate representation of the movies. Some of this stuff is, yeah, but a lot of it brings a similar feeling of rewatching your favorite installment. Whichever it is, doesn't matter. I really don't want to have that fucking conversation here. Don't bring that shit over here, son. With the icing on the cake being Tamara Morrison reprising his role of the Stormtroopers. Without getting ahead of myself, he helps bring a heightened sense of film accuracy to not only this game, but Battlefront 2 as well. He pretty much brings a 10 out of 10 up to an 11. Not just that, but the man's got a good voice. I'm envious. Like usual, the PS2 version of the game was by far the worst. It looks like somebody smeared butter all over the fucking screen. Don't even get me started on the lack of the Jabba's Palace level that Xbox and PC got, or the just gimped multiplayer aspect. Although that second one is a bit of a moot point since the servers have been offline for like a decade at this point, but this does bring me to the stuff that's depressing regardless of platform. The biggest disappointment in this game is the outright lack of space battles. Yeah, there's aerial combat, but nowhere near the dogfights and full-scale wars like in the movies. I guess I shouldn't really be complaining about this since the vehicles control like ass! Ass! They all feel a little too clunky and just overall difficult to control, which for all I know could be accurate to some fucking book that came out in the 90s, but it results in an unsatisfactory experience. I haven't even mentioned trying to shoot while you're in a vehicle, oh my gosh. 1, it takes forever to start firing, and 2, when they do, they overheat way too quickly. And when you shoot something, you have to hit it dead in center or else it doesn't count. Doesn't matter if you're in an AT-ST or even an AT-AT, rule still applies. Except for the controls, these issues are less actual problems with the game and more so tiny things that just occasionally annoy me. My biggest actual issue with the game is that, even on hard, the AI is extremely dumb and easy to cheese. After putting only 3 or so hours in the game, I was still easily winning matches no matter the difficulty. The enemy AI is too easy to beat. The only time you die is when you do something dumb, which for me is 95% of the playthrough, or when you're outgunned. And that only happens because your friendly AI is stuck in some fucking corner somewhere. The only time I did lose a match where it was completely my fault because I'm the ultimate gamer was when a match had a secondary objective, a mechanic that doesn't work in this game all that much. On Geonosis and Hoth, when playing as the Republic and Rebels respectively, you're ordered to take down a specific piece of artillery which gives the enemies more infantry, if I remember correctly, which completely breaks the flow of the game in my eyes. The objectives are simple enough that it feels like too little too late, but they're complicated enough that you have to readjust your entire strategy, if you'd even use that word when talking about my playstyle. If you don't take out the AT-AT quickly enough, then your chances of winning the Battle of Hoth are extremely slim, which is technically accurate to Empire, but it's an odd change of pace for a game like this. Not to mention that if you're not the kind of person to learn everything about a game down to the hitboxes, then Battlefront's gonna last you an afternoon or a weekend at best. It's quite similar to Racer Revenge, where you're meant to get your money's worth over time as you keep coming back to the game, replaying it in small bursts. It's just a shame that the overall content of the game is exactly the same, and what is different is kinda shit. Alright guys, brain turned off, no more complaining about a 17-year-old game. As much as I could complain about the campaign technically being extremely lazy, I don't want to, because it's fun, because Battlefront is fun. Pandemic Studios didn't worry about larger-than-life narratives surrounding themes of light versus dark or good versus evil. They just made you a soldier in an accurate representation of a series that you know and love, then just told you to go nuts. It's an idea that's so simple yet so well executed. It's a game fit for the onslaught of online shooters long before online multiplayer became a standard for the medium. Battlefront is meant to be played by a group of fans, whether it be on a couch together or across an internet connection, but it has more than enough to occupy the more reclusive players in shorter bursts. Personally, I grew up with Battlefront 2 and Republic Commando in high school, so I knew very little about the original game going into it, but all in all, I'd say I had a pretty damn good time. One day in the future, I'll get around to talking about this game's legendary sequel, but for now, I think that Battlefront 1 is a quality shooter to play solo, in local co-op, or in online multiplayer if there's anybody on Steam servers when this video comes out. So yeah, that's all I got to say about the original Battlefront from 2004. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Retrospective. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next time. Later, kids. Have a good night. Bear on.